On Saturday evening, Russia violated the Easter truce nearly 500 times. This is reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces. So, after 1,600 hours, 22 assaults, over 150 shellings, 19 kamikaze drone strikes, and nearly 300 FPV drone strikes were recorded. I'll remind you, the Kremlin announced that from 1,600 hours on April 11th until the end of the day on the 12th, a ceasefire would be in effect.
In total, on April 11th, more than 100 combat clashes were recorded. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the situation is tense in the Kostyantyniv direction. 19 assaults were recorded there. On the Pokrovsk sector of the front, the Russians tried 18 times to push Ukrainian soldiers from their positions. 6 clashes occurred on the Lyman bridgehead. In the Hulyapol and Oleksandrivka sectors of the front, the defense forces repelled 4 attacks each.
Russia is unsuccessfully trying to turn the tide of the war, stated the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrskyi, during a trip to the Southern Operational Zone. The Commander-in-Chief coordinated further actions for conducting an effective defense with the commanders of military units. Let's hear the direct speech.
Russian occupation forces are strengthening their grouping and do not abandon attempts to turn the tide of hostilities in their favor. The defense forces of Ukraine are steadfastly holding the lines. Our goals are unchanged, to inflict maximum losses on the enemy with the aim of exhausting them, as well as the liberation of Ukrainian territories. Oleksandr Syrskyi, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Facebook.
Russia could lose from 300,000 to 1 million people if it tries to fully occupy Donbass. This was stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He also emphasized that Ukraine will not withdraw its troops from this region.
Putin understands he cannot fully occupy Ukraine. It's just that sometimes he shares statements with our partners that do not correspond to his true thoughts. He has huge losses, and there is a lack of well-trained people on the battlefield. He is trying to find a way out of the situation that would look like a victory. That is why he is trying to push us out of Donbass diplomatically through dialogue with the United States. Because for the full occupation of Donbass, he would have to sacrifice from 300,000 to 1 million people, depending on how many years they planned this operation for. This is a huge price even for Putin. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, in an interview with The Rest is Politics.
British politician and public figure Boris Johnson visited the Ukrainian front for the first time. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, he spent 2 days together with the soldiers of the 65th Brigade. Seeing the conditions in which Ukrainian military personnel live and perform combat missions, Johnson noted that Ukraine will definitely win.
The reason for my visit to Zaporizhzhia is that Putin is desperately and unsuccessfully trying to capture it. After 48 hours at the front, I am even more convinced that the Ukrainians will win. The day will come when they'll get rid of Putin's army, and this beautiful and blessed country will become free. Boris Johnson, British political and public figure.
Ukrainian fighters captured a mercenary from Belarus who was fighting on the side of Russia. He voluntarily surrendered to the soldiers of the 47th Mechanized Brigade of the AFU during battles in the Sumy region. He signed a contract with the Russian army and came to fight in Ukraine for the purpose of making money. While attempting to surrender, he stepped on a mine. Fighters from the Magura Brigade found him after hearing his cries for help. Despite the risk, one of the Ukrainian soldiers carried the wounded mercenary on his back for 10 kilometers through mined fields to replenish the exchange fund.
Ukraine is preparing for another meeting in the Ramstein format. It will take place on April 15th. The main topics of the meeting will be strengthening air defense and developing unmanned systems. This was reported by the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Mikhailo Fedorov. During a phone conversation with his German counterpart Boris Pistorius, they discussed the details of the upcoming meeting. Priority areas of cooperation will be presented to the partners, particularly in the field of strengthening air defense, developing unmanned systems, and exchanging data and technologies. The Ministry of Defense noted that Ukraine offers a mutually beneficial model of cooperation. Within its framework, partners gain access to combat data and systems of Ukrainian production. This includes in particular the experience of creating a comprehensive system for combating Shahed-type drones.
Britain has exposed a secret Russian operation in the Atlantic. An Akula-class attack submarine, as well as 2 specialized submarines from Russia's main Directorate of Deep-Sea Research, were sent to the UK's cables and pipelines with the aim of carrying out sabotage. The British military monitored them for over a month. More details on this later in our report.
Russian submarines operated near British cables and pipelines for over a month, but the operation failed thanks to the work of 500 British military personnel. This was stated by the UK Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey. 3 Russian vessels were discovered in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean. And in November of last year, British intelligence also recorded the Russian reconnaissance ship Yantar in the region. According to John Healey, Putin is ordering these vessels to wage a hybrid war against the UK and its allies, including around critical undersea infrastructure.
I am making this statement to condemn Russian activity. And to President Putin, I say, we see your activity regarding our cables and pipelines. And you should know that any attempt to damage them will not be tolerated and will lead to serious consequences.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, commenting on the situation, stated that such operations are part of Russia's overall strategy. Moscow acts comprehensively, from the front in Ukraine to hybrid attacks on Western countries.
Russian covert operations in the North Atlantic, exposed by the United Kingdom, demonstrate the acute regional and global threats posed by the Russian regime. We call on the international community to abandon any illusions regarding Moscow. This regime must be contained, isolated, and ruthlessly sanctioned to counter its aggressive ambitions. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on Telegram.
At the same time, hybrid pressure from the Russian Federation is not limited to the sea. The Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine states Moscow continues to intensify information operations in Europe. This involves spreading narratives aimed at dividing Western societies, discrediting support for Ukraine, and undermining trust in European governments. In addition to disinformation, Russian hackers are active, having developed a new method for obtaining information from Western sources.
Hackers hack popular routers and change DNS settings, allowing them to intercept passwords and digital keys and redirect users to fraudulent websites. The attacks are massive, first targeting a large audience, then focusing on those whose data is valuable for intelligence, employees of government, logistics, and defense organizations. The goal of the operations is to obtain secret information, conduct espionage, and destabilize critical systems. From a publication by the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine on Telegram.
Russia does not always react to pressure from European countries. For instance, Putin ignored British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's threat to seize the sanctioned Russian tankers Universal and Enigma, located in British waters. Moreover, the Kremlin dictator sent a warship to escort the vessels. Experts note that Putin is not afraid of Europe.
Putin treats Europe with contempt. Putin is not afraid of Europe. Unfortunately, he's afraid of the States. He is interested in Trump because he sees the contradictions that emerge under Trump between the US and Europe. Putin very much hopes for a split in the Western world under Trump.
Russia's desire to destroy Western cohesion is understood in Europe. And while the Kremlin insists that Russia poses no danger to any state in the world, France notes that a possible war with the Russian Federation is becoming a priority for the country's defense planning.
A full-scale war with Russia remains my main concern in terms of preparing the armed forces. We are in a dangerous period. There is a constant Russian threat to our continent. Ukrainians have been heroically holding out for over 4 years. We shouldn't spread panic, but simply raise awareness, as we need these investments in defense.
In turn, Germany is also strengthening its defense component. The Bundestag proposes introducing mandatory military training for reservists to expand the capabilities of its army. The Baltic states are also concerned about Russian actions. For example, Lithuania is moving strategic reserves further from the border with Belarus, given the risks of possible escalation and sabotage. Experts note, Europe is no longer just recording threats. It is rebuilding its security system, strengthening armies, changing approaches, and preparing for a long confrontation to repel the aggressor country once and for all. Maria Jelutenko for Freedom TV channel.